It is my favorite time of the year. By now, if you're taking a look at some of the videos that we've been uploading on this channel, you're seeing topics and series from the past bringing themselves back into the spotlight. This is because, well, I'm actually going on a trip, so I have to pre-record topics, but also because this is the time of the year where we can start looking at trades in the past and taking a look at moves that have since been completed after the trades were done years ago. Today, our focus is on the Canadiens and the Canucks, because 2 years ago, on September 19th, 2023, we had ourselves this trade that shook up the hockey world and added a good amount of flexibility to both of these teams and their rosters. Let's head over to the Tanner Pearson and Casey DeSmith trade. Because all these years later, with the 79th overall pick in the 2025 NHL Entry Draft, the trade is now finalized. Let's head over to the trade details over here, courtesy of Puckpedia.com. On September 19th, 2023, the Montreal Canadiens acquired Tanner Pearson and a 2025 third-round pick from the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Casey DeSmith. The Montreal Canadiens were losing out on $1.45 million in salary cap space. The Vancouver Canucks were grabbing themselves $1.45 in cap space with this move because the two players getting swapped were of these dollar amounts. Tanner Pearson was 32 years old, making $3.25 million a year until the end of 2024. Casey DeSmith, whose contract was also expiring at 2024's end, was making $1.8 million. The trade was simple. Vancouver was sending over Tanner Pearson, who at the time wasn't really having a good time with the Vancouver Canucks. He finished off the 22-23 season with 5 points in 14 games. Don't get me wrong, once upon a time, Tanner Pearson actually was a very valuable piece for Vancouver. After being acquired by the Canucks in the Eric Goodbranson trade in 2019, he ended up posting 12 points in 19 games to end off that 18-19 season. He then was a 20-goal guy in 69 games played, a shortened sample because of the COVID shutdown year. But he was a top 6 forward, he had 45 points, he developed some really good friendship with Miller, and he also was stallmates with Elias Pettersson. You know, Pettersson, Pearson, they were right beside each other, so Pearson was kind of the glue that allowed Miller and Pettersson to get along. And that's some extra details that didn't really need to be talked about, but really, Tanner Pearson was a locker room guy, a veteran leadership guy. There were some really big apparent issues with how his hand was recovering under the Canucks' health management staff that was even called out by Quinn Hughes. But after that disaster season for Tanner Pearson, where he only played 14 games, the Vancouver Canucks traded him away. His cap hit was kind of unreasonable, and they ended up attaching a draft pick in the move. It was Tanner Pearson as well as that 2025 third-round pick from Vancouver for one Casey DeSmith. Now, DeSmith was somewhat of a hot commodity for Vancouver, too. You see, he had gotten traded over to Montreal in the second Jeff Petrie trade from Pittsburgh. So, DeSmith was a Canadian for a very short amount of time. He was only there for a few days, and then wham, he gets sent over to Vancouver, where he does find himself a role and a spot on the team. The Canucks at this point, I think they were losing out on, was it Jaro Halak at the end of the 22-23 season, or was it Colin Delia? Yeah, Colin Delia and Spencer Martin were in Vancouver in that season. The Canucks needed a backup, and Artur Shilovs wasn't ready yet, so Casey DeSmith was brought on to be the Vancouver Canucks backup in 23-24. He had a fine season, all things considered, .896 save percentage in 29 games. He was fine, but in the playoffs is where DeSmith really shined. That is where he was forced to become the starter for a little bit because Thatcher Demko got hurt. Then DeSmith got outdueled by Artur Shilovs because DeSmith also got hurt. Shilovs was the starter, Tolopilo was the backup, and the rest is history for Vancouver goaltending. But ultimately, this trade worked out for both sides because Casey DeSmith was a very valuable backup piece for the Vancouver Canucks. Pearson, of course, he didn't have the best season as a Montreal Canadien. He only had 13 points in 54 games played. Admittedly, he wasn't really put in a good position to succeed here either, but becoming a free agent and going over to Vegas, for some reason, Tanner Pearson was able to revitalize his career in a pretty meaningful way. 27 points in 78 games that season. Pearson now became a free agent and he had signed with the Winnipeg Jets on a 1-year, $1 million AAV deal. That's a lot more in line with probably what he should be capable of getting, considering the $3.25 million. That was a lot of money. He signed for really cheap in Vegas as well, so I guess that adds to the flexibility there. But Tanner Pearson and the draft pick were sent over to Montreal for Casey DeSmith. All in all, a very fine trade for both sides. Montreal getting some draft capital, Vancouver getting the goaltending support that they wanted. Casey DeSmith then used the momentum he had from that 23-24 Canucks season to head over to Dallas to play behind Jake Ottinger, where in 27 games he had a .915 save percentage. Casey DeSmith was a monster and one of the best goalies to stream in fantasy hockey throughout the course of the entire year. In a season where league save percentage was around .900 average, Casey DeSmith had a .915. What an absolutely astounding year for one of the best backups in the league. For Montreal, on the other hand, you want to talk about the draft pick that the Habs ended up getting. Well, the Canucks sent it to Montreal, yes, but the Habs didn't actually use it. You see, the pick was sent to Montreal on September 19th, 2023, but on June 28th, 2025, the actual draft date itself, the Montreal Canadiens ended up trading this 79th overall pick, which originally belonged to Vancouver, to Boston in order to acquire the 69th overall pick. The Habs traded this 79th pick as well as a 4th-round pick, which was 108th overall, to Boston, and the Habs ended up getting 69th overall instead, which they used to select Hayden Papanekas. Now, we did make a video diving into Hayden Papanekas as a prospect. He is a 3rd-round pick by the Canadiens, 6'5", 203, big guy, right-handed player. And is there any numbers here? No, there are not. So we can head over to his Elite Prospects page just to see the finalized numbers there. Maybe some Canucks fans are familiar with Papanekas because he was a Kelowna Rocket this most recent season. Defensively sound center, energy forward, penalty kill specialist, who had scored, a total of 43 points in 71 games. Not bad, not amazing, but still okay, and still with a lot of room to grow, especially as a defensively minded big frame center. I think a lot of Canadiens fans are happy with this draft acquisition here out of the 2025 draft, but you gotta remember, the reason the Canadiens have this guy is because they were able to make a swing on that draft pick. 69th overall over to Montreal in exchange for 79 and 108. 79 was acquired by Montreal in the Casey DeSmith-Tanner Pearson trade. So really, if you wanted to break it down, the Montreal Canadiens traded away the 108th overall pick and Casey DeSmith in exchange for 1 year of Tanner Pearson and the rights to draft Hayden Papanekas. This is the trade return finalized. The trade tree is all done because these picks have been locked in stone. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Casey DeSmith and Tanner Pearson out of Vancouver and Montreal? What are your thoughts on Hayden Papanekas, the center? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.